Hey guys, and welcome back to Hoosier Hardware. Today we're going to be building a little bit of a gaming console killer type PC, except that we're focused on the CPU side of things. The GPU side can come later on down the road. If you guys are interested in that, by the way, let me know down below in those comments. But we're focused on stuffing a Ryzen 9 3900X into a really small PC case. Now, I did go ahead and choose the Node 202 for this build, and the reason for that is really simple. I already had a Node 202 laying around. Now, there is great appeal in stuffing a really powerful processor and then a really powerful GPU into a very small form factor. Most notably, if you are putting this thing into some sort of entertainment center, maybe where a console would normally go, but you don't want to go the console gaming route, you want to go the PC gaming route, then it is important to have that smaller form factor so it fits in with the general aesthetic, all that sort of thing. Now, the nice thing about the Node 202 is it does have a vertical and a horizontal orientation that you can use. You can lay it on its side or stand upright. It does come with a stand for that purpose, so you can kind of fit it to the space as you need it. And it is a quite small chassis, resembling a more traditional gaming console that we might think of sort of as that horizontal box that sits in a somewhat thin shelf and is ready to go. So the Node 202 is a very minimalist case. It looks great in most circumstances, and in most surroundings it's gonna fit in just fine. It's basically just a box that is matte black, and it fits in with pretty much anything. So with that in mind, and keeping in mind that we're focused today on the 3900X, the 12-core, 24-thread behemoth from AMD, retails for a recommended price of $500, though you can normally find them a little bit cheaper right now. Let's go ahead and take a look if it's even possible to keep this thing cool under load in the Node 202, or if we need to step it down to something like a 3700X or maybe even a 3600 on the Ryzen side of things. So to get us started today, we're gonna talk about a little bit of the settings. Understand that these tests are focused on thermals because that to me is the biggest limitation. I am using a B350 motherboard instead of something like an X570 mini-ITX board or even a B450 motherboard, though in the links down below in that description, you'll find pretty much everything I'm using in this testing environment, the case, a couple motherboard recommendations, as well as the CPU itself. Now, one of the first things I did want to find out about this particular case is whether it makes a huge difference lining things up horizontally or vertically. And with this CPU and with this case, the biggest limitation when it comes to cooling is going to be in the height of the cooler. The Node 202 is a pretty short case when it comes to cooler height, so you're really limited on your selection. Now, I am falling back on my modified Wraith Spire cooler. This is the Wraith Spire heatsink featured with a very slim fan instead of the normal Wraith Spire fan. And with this fan, I'm able to actually fit this CPU cooler in the case. The only modification I make for the case is I remove the CPU dust filter because that added height actually does get in the way when you're trying to shut the case up. But for the most part, this Wraith Spire cooler is about, as with the modifications, it's about as tall as you can possibly get a cooler in this case and still have clearance and not have to worry about that fan rubbing up against anything. Now, the nice thing about the Fractal Design Node 202 is that we do have really good ventilation exactly where we need it. We actually get ventilation right over the CPU, so that downfire cooler is going to have easy access to fresh air, and we do have exhaust right there as well to exhaust out from the power supply as well as from the CPU area. We have a good vent to force air out. Now, the GPU is on the other side of the chassis. It's actually sort of divided off in its own little compartment. So we do actually have dedicated intake for the GPU and a dedicated intake for the power supply as well. With that out of the way, I basically just ran tests in Cinebench R20 on loop, and I tested the temperatures after about 10 minutes. And what I found was between the vertical and horizontal alignment, there's really not a big difference in temperatures or in clock speeds that we end up with. In fact, we end up right around that 3.7, 3.8 gigahertz range for both orientations. So we're pretty much good to go there, running the CPU at stock, letting Precision Boost just sort of do its thing. But if you're looking to overclock, this is not the way to do it. If you're getting a 3900X in a Node 202, or really most small cases that aren't featuring some sort of custom water loop or dedicated all-in-one cooler that's removing that heat from the CPU, you're gonna struggle to keep this CPU cool with a small cooler. So do keep your expectations in check. We're not gonna be running something like a 12 core, or even if you jump up to the 3950X, you're not gonna be running these CPUs in 4.3 gigahertz range all core like you might be able to in a full tower. You are going to sacrifice a little bit of clock speed, but what we're seeing here when we look at the Cinebench R20 score, when we compare pass 1 score versus pass 10 score, we're actually not giving up a whole lot of all-core performance by running this CPU in such a small enclosure with a little bit of a thermal bottleneck with this CPU cooler and chassis. We're actually not giving up a lot of performance at all. So even though we are seeing the clock speed drop down to about 3.7, 3.8 gigahertz, we're actually doing okay when it comes to the actual performance of the CPU. Now, like all stock coolers, the Wraithspire cooler is not the quietest of coolers out there, though again, when we're working with such a small form factor, we are very limited on what kind of fans we can attach. And it's also worth noting, with this aftermarket fan, we're getting the noise from a completely different cooler altogether. I believe this is the Cryorig C7, maybe? And yes, I did go ahead and check. This is the fan on the Wraithspire cooler in this video came from the Cryorig C7 cooler. And I'll go ahead and give you a noise test both at idle as well as at full load on Cinebench after several minutes where it's gotten nice and toasty in there to let you sort of hear what this sounds like. This test was done at roughly 20 inches from the microphone to the actual cooler itself, so take a listen. So if the original question comes down to, can you stuff a Ryzen 9 3900X or possibly even a 3950X into a very small form factor PC that's air-cooled and still keep it cool and under control? The answer is yes. You will absolutely have to deal with a little bit more fan noise unless you're willing to go in and actually lower the clocks manually down even further yourself, which would be a good way to save on your thermals as well as your noise levels, keeping the system quieter. Maybe you don't need those 3.8 gigahertz-ish clock speed. Maybe you only need 3 gigahertz and you're really more interested in just having tons of cores and threads laying around. I don't really know why you would want to lower the clock speeds that much, but maybe you do want the thermals to stay more under control. You can absolutely go that route. You can also, with a Fractal Design Node 202 and several other smaller form factor PCs, you can actually mod the Node 202 to get in an AIO. I believe Bitwit, or Kyle over at Bitwit, did that quite a while back with his Node 202 to fit an AIO into that system. It's actually not an overly hard bit of modification you have to do. I think you have to like cut one crossbar off to fit a cooler in there like that, but you can lower the noise level a little bit by doing something like that as well. And the nice thing about the Node 202 is you can fit in a full-length GPU and have it be completely under control because it does have that access on the GPU side to fresh air. The only sort of caveat there is, being an ITX system, you do have to fit a cooler that only has 2 slot with card, or maybe 2.5 slots. You could actually probably get away with that as well in the Node 202. But basically today I was just trying to figure out whether you can actually fit a Ryzen 9 3900X into a chassis as small as the Node 202 in this case, and the answer is yes, absolutely you can. If you get the right cooler for it, you can actually keep it somewhat under control and still get decent clock speeds across all 12 cores and 24 threads and get excellent performance in a very small form factor. So I think it's really cool, but I do want to know your guys' thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in those comments down below. And of course, if you like this video and you want to see more like it, give this video a like, share, subscribe, comment. All those things are very helpful for the channel. You can follow me both on Instagram and on Twitter at Hoosier Hardware. And as always, I'll let YouTube queue up a couple more videos from my channel for you to watch. I'm Shane with Hoosier Hardware, and I'll see you guys in the next video.